Well, I make it 2 minutes past, so we will crack on. We are currently running over 130 people. So welcome to either the third or maybe fourth design end-to-end walkthrough. I can see from various names here, we've got some that are have helped in getting the design out the door. So thank you for those. And also, I'm sure we've got some people who are dipping their toe in the world of market-wide half-hourly settlement. My name is Justin Andrews. I'm within the program and I'm part of the design team. And just for your information, I have two roles within the program. First of all, I chair the design advisory group, an industry expert group, which is got the primary role of approving the design at the end of this. And also I'm involved within the design team as leading on the Elexon Central Systems work with various colleagues within the team, one of which is Kevin Spencer, who will be taking us through some of the agenda items today, along with me. We also will be joined by Paul Pettit, who will take you through the architecture, the event-driven architecture and the data integration platform. And we've got Adrian as well, who will be taking you through the testing elements. So let's see if I press the right button and we will go on to the next slide. Right, so session overview. Basically, there's, the approach is to give you an insight, and today's is really the introduction to market-wide half-hourly settlement. And we are going to be referencing various design artifacts. And as you can see, that this is one of four dedicated walkthroughs that we've got, as well as some deep dives on some of the areas. I'm hoping that you will have all received various communiques about when the various sessions are on, and I hope you can attend accordingly. So what would be a successful outcome for us today, I think, is to help lead you through on how did we get to the blueprint for half-hourly settlement and what has been our approach to deliver all the various artifacts that give us our detailed design, both from a business point and from a technical point of view, such that those things you can take off as market participants and do your own design, build and test activities, and also that the program can then develop the actual manifestation of these design artifacts into the relevant industry codes, be it the balancing settlement code, smart energy code, retail energy code, just to name but a few. So as I've said, we're going to focus on how did we get to where we've got to. And we're also, I nearly forgot, we're going to talk to you not only about the data integration platform or the DIP and testing, but also some things that are outside the scope of what we call consequential change. Now, if I've got the Slido rules of engagement right, there you can use that link, which will come up in at the bottom of this first slide. So please put your questions in there. We've got a dedicated slot at the end of the session so that we can go through those questions. I will be asking Amity as we go through, who's looking after Slido for us, if there are any pertinent questions which are best dealt with by the subject matter that we've just covered, be it the history, the target operating model, so forth and so on. So we'll see how the questions look to see whether we will answer some of those and keep it within the section, or we'll just do them all at the end. So I think I've covered roughly everything in there. And just to note, we will be issuing the slides again, and I believe the questions will also and we'll have to see about that on the answers will be on the MHHS website. So that's what we're seeking to cover today. I will just have a quick look to see if anybody has suddenly realised that this is not what they want and they've dialed out, but we haven't, so we're good there. So let's move on to what we'll cover. And that's it in a bit more detail. Is basically we'll be going through the design. How do we get there? We'll give you, or Kevin Spencer will take you through the various elements of the target operating model and some of the architecture work. We'll go through, or I will go through the design approach and the deliverables. How have we got to all the design artifacts? Because it's been an industry-led process on this. Then Paul Pettit will take us through the data, a high-level view of the data integration platform and some of the basics there. Then Adrian will take you through to our approach to testing. It'll then revert back to me on, I'll give you a little overview of consequential change, and then I'll take you through where we've got on the other feedback sessions, and then we've got our Slido review. So let's get into it then. So without any further ado, Kevin, will you take us through how we've got to where we've got?
I just see somebody asking, are we going to record this session?
It should be already recorded, or recording as we speak. I saw a message which said recording has started.
Okay.
Amate, can you confirm that we were recording? Yeah, and you can. Yeah, you'll get access to the recording as well. Okay, Kevin.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'm just going to run you through a bit of the background to market-wide half-hourly settlement and where it all came from. I'm sure to some of you on the call this is all very new, but it's not new at all. I think we really need to go back to 2010 when the sort of source, the initiation of all of this work happened, and that happened off the back of an Ofgem license condition, which required all of the customers in the then profile classes 5 to 8 to be fitted with an advanced meter. License condition also said that from those advanced meters, you must be able to collect that half-hourly data, which the advanced meters are capable of, remotely. So off the back of that, Elexon thought, well, this is an opportunity to improve settlement accuracy, and they launched the Profiling and Settlement Review Group, PSRG, and the PSRG did a number of consultations and looked at the benefits of settling that data from those profile classes 5 to 8 meters half hourly, and that eventually led to a modification of the BSC called P272, which eventually moved those meters, or at least the majority of them, by 2017. Ofgem itself was looking had launched their settlement reform programme, and they started with a settlement reform expert group, and that expert group looked at a number of things, including the settlement timetable, and they started to look at what needed to happen to enable elective half-hourly settlement. So half-hourly settlement where parties had elected to take part. This was then picked up by the Settlement Reform Advisory Group, which was an Elexon-led group, and that group did a number of things and a number of consultations, but they put in those changes and a number of changes to enable elective half-hourly settlement. So it's off the back of this that the settlement reform piece continued, and Ofgem then launched the design working group, which they tasked with developing the target operating model for market-wide half-hourly settlement, and that group started in 2017. That group broke down all the processes required to settle metering systems half-hourly, and then they built up those processes into 5 different options, 5 different target operating models. Those operating models were then evaluated and assessed until they finalised their recommendation for the target operating model, and that went to Elexon for approval, and that was the preferred target operating model. The group then went on to do a high-level transition plan, and that was the final deliverable for that working group. Now, while all of this was going on, Ofgem working in the background on the full business case for settlement reform, and in the interim, they didn't want to lose any pace, so they set up two new working groups. They set up the Code Change and Development Group, and that was tasked with looking at the scope of the code changes required and to develop the detail of the target operating models further. The Architecture Working Group, the AWG, ran in parallel with CCDG, and the Architecture Working Group were tasked with developing a reference architecture for market-wide half-hourly settlement, and they also, in conjunction with some of the members of the CCDG, produced a number of business process models, which actually formed the basis of the work that the programme. It was effectively the collateral that the programme had when it started in the middle of last year. So that is a high-level run-through of how we got to where we are today. And if I'll now go on and talk you through the target operating model. Next slide, please, Justin. So many of you hopefully have seen this version of this diagram before. This is the diagram as it was delivered to Ofgem by the design working group. It had blue shading, which were supplier provided services. It had orange shading, which was services that were LDSO provided, and it had this teal shading, which is the box at the bottom there, which is the BSC Central Settlement Services. This model has been further refined under the programme to give some more context. So if you'd just like to show the next slide, please, Justin. So on this slide, you can get an idea of the different market segments. So we've got on the left there, we've got the smart market segment, down the middle, the advanced market segment, and on the right, the unmetered market segment. Now, in the smart, and obviously that includes the non-smart meters, or the traditional meters as generally referred to under the programme. And there's around 30 million metering systems in that market segment, or at least there will be when all the metering systems have been migrated. When the metering systems are migrated, we reckon there's going to be about 850,000 in the advanced market segment. And once rationalised, we think there will be around, well, I think there'll be around 20,000 MPANs in the unmetered market segment. Obviously, sitting behind those MPANs are thousands and thousands of pieces of street furniture, from street lights and cable cabinets and CCTVs, as shown on the little diagram. So there's a lot sitting behind that. So moving on to the next slide, I'll start talking you through the services. So Justin, can we have the next slide? So we're starting at the top with the metering services. These services come in two flavours, as it were. We have the smart metering service, and on the middle there we have the advanced metering service. But fundamentally, the metering services are tasked with installing the meters, commissioning them, testing, protocol testing, fixing faults and general maintenance of those meters. I guess what's not shown in this diagram is the traditional meters will still largely need an eyeball reading, so a man in a van would go around and collect them. The smart metering infrastructure is via the data and communications company, so that's the communications method for accessing data from the smart meters. But in the advanced, it's more mobile telephony. So most of those advanced meters will have a SIM card, but there's also other communications, including public service telephone networks, which is why I think we've got an old-fashioned phone in that box in the middle there. So those are the metering services, and I'll now move on to talk about the various data services. So Justin, if you would like to change the slide, please. So the Smart Data Service is the service that accesses the data from the traditional meters and from the smart meters. It has 3 different types of services embedded within it. It's got the meter data retrieval service, and that is the service that interacts directly via the data and communications company to access the half-hourly data and other data from the smart meter. We said that any of these services can be performed by the supplier himself if he so wishes, or he can buy these services in on a commercial basis. So when we talk about the meter data retrieval service, that could be the supplier using his own access via the DCC. The meter reading service is what it says. You can see the little van on there, the man in the van who will go around and collect the meter readings from the traditional meetings and potentially could be eyeballing smart meters where there are communications faults. So that's where the data is collected, but then that data needs to be processed. So within the Smart Data Service, we've got the processing service, Smart, and that's responsible for validating all that data that's coming in from the meter reading service and the meter data retrieval service. And it will do that according to a number of rules, and we've got an artifact called the validation and estimation method statement for the Smart Data Service, and you'll be able to see that has now been published. And that sets out all the rules for firstly validating that data. And if the data validates and it's perfectly okay, then that data would be flowed on to the Elexon systems. If not, then there is a hierarchy of estimation techniques that the Smart Data Service would need to undertake to calculate half-hourly data to then be sent into the central systems. So that's the Smart Data Service. So shall we move on now and have a look at the Advanced Data Service? So the Advanced Data Service looks very much like the role currently called a half-hourly data collector. It will be dialing up those advanced metering systems, either using their own software or the software provided by the meter manufacturers. They too have a method statement which has been published. That method statement, similar to the Smart Data Service, sets out the rules for validating the data that they are collecting directly from the meter themselves. And it also has a number of estimation methods depending on if it's a traditional advanced half-hourly type meter, and there's some different estimation methods if it would potentially could be a domestic meter within that advanced segment, which the customer has opted out of allowing collection of its half-hourly data. So there's some estimation methods in there on how to calculate half-hourly data for those customers who have decided to opt out of provision of their half-hourly data. So that's a high-level view of the Advanced Data Service. If we now move into the unmetered. So there's two unmetered services here. So there's obviously, because it's unmetered, there's no metering service in the unmetered segment, but the unmetered supplies operator, that is the responsibility of the license distribution business. They can provide it direct, or they could potentially procure it if they so wished. And that's the customer-facing piece of the unmetered supplies segment. They will collect the inventories of the unmetered apparatus from the customer. They will validate that against a set of standing data, which is actually provided by Elexon, to check that is valid. Oh, dropped out of there. And they will provide using a new data flow which has been defined. It's called the unmetered supplies inventory. That's a D388 to the unmetered supplies data service, which is the blue box. That is the supplier is responsible for procuring an unmetered supplies data service. Some of the larger customers can directly contract an unmetered supplies data service as they currently do in the half-hourly unmetered market. Now, the unmetered supplies data service is responsible for taking that inventory information and validating it itself. If it finds any validation errors, it will go back on another new data flow to the unmetered supplies data service using the D389. And there are method statements in the artifacts for both the unmetered supplies operator and a separate method statement for the unmetered supplies data service. The unmetered supplies data service operates a piece of software called an equivalent meter, and it's that piece of software which calculates the half-hourly volumes that will be sent on into central settlement. So that is the role unmetered roles under the target operating model. So Justin, would you like to move on to the next slide? A quick sip of water. So we're introducing 4 new services into Elexon Central Systems. One service looks very much like the existing supply volume allocation agent, but it will be new software. But starting at the top, the market-wide data service. Initially, this will just look like another data aggregator. So in the current market, we have half-hourly data aggregators that add up the half-hourly data. This role will now be provided by the market-wide data service, and that will add the data up by certain criteria according to information, standing data or information provided by the registration service. And when we say registration service, we're talking about SMOS, which is a subset of MPAS, that's the supplier meter registration service, or the meter point administration service. And that data will also be flowed to all the parties that we've previously talked about, and also be flowed into Elexon Central Systems. So the market-wide data service will add up all the data, and it will pass that data through to the volume allocation service for the onward calculations. But before we do that, we need to talk about the load shaping service. So the load shaping service is effectively what will replace the old profiling arrangements. It will be receiving all the actual data on nearly day +1, certainly from the smart metering systems, and it will calculate according to a set of categories load shapes by simply averaging that data which it has received. It sends that data back out to the data services, which I've just talked about, and that data is then used in a number of those estimation techniques which I previously mentioned. The volume allocation service will take the data provided by the MDS, and certainly during transition, it might be processing that data alongside data provided by actual data aggregators. And it will add up all of that data by suppliers and by supplier BMU balancing mechanism units. And once it has done so, it will difference that from the volumes that we know are going into the different distribution regions, which are calculated by a separate settlement agent called the Central Data Collection Agent. And they produce a view called the GSP group take. And so once the volume allocation service has added up all those volumes, it will difference it from the GSP group take, and there will be a difference in each settlement period. And the volume allocation service will then calculate a couple of group correction factors, one for import and one for export. And then those factors will be applied to each supplier's BM units, such that when you add everything up, the total of the supplier's consumption within the DSP group will be equal to that group take that's been provided by the CDCA. Now, all of these services will be using the industry standing data, and that's a new service which will replace what we currently call market domain data. There are a number of new tables that are in there, and there is also an artifact which sets out all the entities for sort of existing amended entities that are already in market domain data and all the new entities. As with those other services, there is a method statement for each of those in that green box there. There's a method statement for the market-wide data service. There is a method statement for the load shaping service, and there is a method statement for the volume allocation service. Those method statements also set out validation rules on the ingestion of data from the data services and some exception reports to be sent back out for those metering systems that fail validation. The industry standing data is currently foreseen to still be a monthly process with consultation, but that data will be published on a hosting platform somewhere, and parties will be notified where they can pick that up once it has been published. Justin, I think that's it. Can you just move on to the next slide? Just check if that is it. That's it. So I think that's everything I had. Justin, were we going to take questions now or at the end?
Well, I was just thinking I was going to take some now, but I haven't got sight of them yet. So I think we'll take them all at the end, if that's okay.
I'll pass back over to you then, Justin.
I just wanted to do a little plug. There is, on Friday morning, Kevin and I will be running a meter to bank playback session, which will basically go through the meter right through to settlement process and give you the main aspects of the requirements. We'll show you some business process models for each of these services, from meter through the processing services into central settlement, and we will be describing more about the functions of each of these services within central settlement. So if you are able to, and you want to understand more about how metering data is got, how it's transformed or processed, and therefore how it's used within central settlement to derive volumes by suppliers, then please join that on Friday morning. So where are we now? Let's see if I can. Yes.
Just to say that we do actually have some questions on slide. It's up to you if you want to take some now, but we can, or we can take them at the end, whatever works for you.
Okay. Well, Amity, why don't we just take one and see how we get on, and if it works well, we'll try and answer a few more. If it's not working well, we'll take them all at the end. So, sure. Amity, you have to, I'm a bit new to this sort of Slido process, so you'll have to bear with me then.
No worries. Well, I'll read out the one that's at the top, which has had the most, which is the most popular. Where do DUOS billing and customer invoicing services fit in these TOM data services? That's the top one that's come up.
Okay, right. So DUOS billing. So for reactive power, the data will come straight out from the advanced data service, and the licensed distribution operators will be subscribing to those publications from the advanced data service. Otherwise, the data will be going into Elexon, and Elexon will be providing DUOS reports by DUOS tariff ID. In fact, the active import for advanced data services will also be ingested directly from the data service. But within the Elexon system, that data the market-wide data service will be aggregating the data by the DUOS tariff ID, which is currently called the line loss factor class ID, but we're going to rebrand that to a name which is more synonymous with what that data item actually does. So if you look in the artifacts that we've published, the format of that report can be found in the reporting interface specification.
So if you take the current situation, the half-hourly data collector sends meter data to the distribution business for the site-specific DUOS billing, and Elexon Central Systems send a DUOS report for aggregated, DUOS tariffs. And in the new world, you've got the advanced data service sending the data. So distribution businesses will be doing their site-specific as from that data, and for all the other DUOS tariffs that will come from data from a central Elexon Central Settlement Service. And I suppose what's not shown in this diagram is you've got distribution businesses who are providing registration services. So if you think, say, maybe to the left-hand side of this diagram, you've got a blob there called LDS or licensed distribution service operators or distribution businesses. They'll be receiving data. And I think we might have in some of the artifacts, there might be some more context diagrams, and maybe we'll take an action to append that to the slide pack so you see the wider context of the industry participants around the market-wide half-hourly settlement target operating model. Amity, did that answer that one? And did you say you had another question?
Yeah, there's another. There are a couple more, but the second one that's got the second votes is, what is the plan for all the many traditional meters out there that cannot settle half hourly?
Okay, so those meters will be read using an eyeball read, and that data goes to is done by the meter reading service. That is provided to the meter readings service. The meter reading service provides that to the processing service. The processing service validates that data, and then it's got the load shape, which is provided by the load shaping service. You can see down the bottom there, and that load shape will give you the proportion of energy in each of those in each settlement period for a settlement day. And the processing service then uses one of a number of the estimating techniques to calculate. Well, they'll calculate a meter advance from those meter readings, and it will use the load shape to calculate the proportion of that energy within each half hour, thus converting the data to half hourly.
So in summary, you've still got your traditional meters here, which is covered by the metering service Smart. And just to note there, you've got this metering service covering both traditional meters and Smart. And as Kevin has said, you'll have a visit, or a customer might submit a reading. That reading may cover a day, a month, a year, and then the Smart data service uses these load shapes, as Kevin has said, to convert those readings into half-hourly readings, which are then taken into the central systems here. I think there's one thing to iterate or to note here is Central Settlement Services is ingesting half-hourly data, and if it's from a smart meter, one would hope that its actual readings, same from advanced, they're sort of calculated half-hourly readings, but this is all half-hourly data that is processed by the BSC Central Systems. Amity, any others?
We've got 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 more, so I don't know whether you want to take them all now.
Keep on going and we'll see how we go for time, yeah?
Yes, so the next one is, does the advanced data service replace the HHDC, or will existing HHDCs provide the ADS?
The ADS does replace the HHDC, but that does not preclude existing HHDCs qualifying as an ADS and using their existing half-hourly systems.
Yeah, I think probably the answer is yes to both. It's you've got existing half-hourly data collectors, and in the half-hourly settlement world, they are advanced data services. So as Kevin has said, those existing HHDCs could choose to not carry on in the new world, or is more likely is they will change their existing systems on getting data, well, probably more processing, validating and estimating under the new rules of the advanced data service, and they will qualify according to those new rules, and they will replace the, as we know it in current language, the half-hourly data collectors. Amity, carry on, please.
Great. So the next one is, will the load shaping service be also applied to advanced meter missing volumes?
Yes, so a lot of the existing estimation techniques still remain in the advanced segment, but they do also receive the load shapes for calculation in various circumstances.
So I've just noticed that that's probably a slight omission in the diagram, isn't it, Kevin, where we should see the load shape data going to both the advanced data service.
Yeah, so I think this matches the original target operating model, but even the unmetered supplies data service can use the load shapes for defaulting. So yes.
Okay, Amity.
The next one is, can you confirm that ADS also passes actual data to LSS?
Yes.
Yes.
And because the process of the load shapes are created using actual data from the smart meter segment, the advanced segment, and
yeah, there are load shape categories that are specifically for advanced. Yeah, and likewise for unmetered.
Yeah,
brilliant. So, the next one is, will there be a requirement to obtain TOU register readings from advanced meters in C, E, and G, where we do not currently use them in billing?
So C, E, and G are measurement classes. So those measurement classes will be going. The calculations are all based. The load shaping calculations are all based on cumulative reads and not time of use reads.
And is it worth just saying measurement class indicates what, Kevin?
Currently, the existing measurement classes divide meters up if they're domestic or non-domestic, if they're whole current or CT, and currently by the size of customer as well. So are they over 100 kilowatts or less than 100 kilowatts? Those distinctions will all disappear. But the registration service will contain a connection type indicator, which will tell you if it's whole current, low voltage CT, high voltage CT, or extra high voltage CT, so you can work it out. It'll also contain a domestic premise indicator, which says true or false, and that'll allow you to group customers to an equivalence of C, F, and G.
So under the market-wide half-hourly settlement target operating model, we've defined new parameters that are more relevant for the classification of either a customer or, a metering system, or MPAN. Is that right, Kevin?
Yes, yeah. So I think we wanted to get rid of things that were like data items that were representing more than one thing, like it's domestic and it's CT, or it's domestic and not, or non-domestic and not CT. So you actually derive this direct from the detail.
Yeah. So we tried to make it more efficient and effective, and I think it's worth noting that one of the principles of half-hourly settlement is to make things more accurate, because you're using the half-hourly data from the smart meters as well as other types of meters. We're trying to make it more timely, and that's perhaps, well, that is something we'll cover on Friday, that the overall settlement timetable will be coming down from 14 months to roughly 4 months, and then the first initial financial settlement run, called SF or settlement final, will come down from 16 working days to between 5 and 7 working days. And also we try to remove some of the complexity that profiling and non-half hourly provides us at the moment, and the various sort of standing data that is associated with those non-half hourly meters. So it's sort of an opportunity to make things a bit more efficient and effective, as well as more accurate and timely. Okay, next question.
Brilliant. Will the same correction factor be applied to all import and export factors equally, or will there be any differences to account for portfolio type of suppliers?
For every settlement period, 2 correction factors will be calculated, one specifically for import sites and one specifically for export sites. I think what's interesting about them is that they fall about 1. So if it was 1.1 for import, it would be 0.9 for export, and vice versa. The calculations for GSP group correction factor are set out in the volume allocation service method statement.
I think it's true to say we have things called consumption component classes at the moment, which differentiate metering systems by whether the data is actual, estimate, import, export, losses, just to name but a few. And we have the ability, as we do today, to apply different weights, or in effect different amounts of GSP group correction to those different consumption component classes. So I think the fundamental principle is here with GSP group correction, you're trying to allocate that sort of difference in energy depending on the amount of sort of error within that, say, consumption component class, or within that sort of group of type of metering systems. And the CCDG, the Consequential Change,
Development Group.
Thank you, Kevin. I can't even remember the name. Did propose some initial weights, didn't they, Kevin, for that, which you will be able to see in one of the design documents, probably the VAS method statement.
It's in the VAS method statement. Yeah. They are subject to change, and I've already had a couple of challenges on the initial ones that have been proposed. Currently, the consumption component class scaling weight is 0 for export. So during transition, they will need to be updated to non-zero values.
And those weights are governed under the Balancing and Settlement Code, and will be governed by a committee under the panel. So, there will be a process administered or managed by Elexon as BSCCO, and from time to time those weights will be reviewed. And I can well imagine that after transition, there'll have been, or during transition, these market parameters will be monitored, and then those changes to those weights might be proposed by Elexon, which will then be reviewed, probably consulted on with industry, and approved by one of the BSC panel committees. Okay, next question, please.
Has it been considered how the load shape service will deal with new connections where they are initially energized but the comms do not work, so no historic data?
The load shaping service doesn't have to worry about that. It only has to worry about any actual data that it's received.
So is another way of answering that is, you've got a new site, you haven't got any data. I presume the smart data set, we do have something at the moment called the EAC, the Estimate of Annual Consumption, and there is a proposal within the design documentation to replace that under market-wide half-hourly settlement, and there are various options on that. And I presume then in that case, Kevin, that sort of EAC could be used which would then be used with the load shaping data to estimate and put in half-hourly data for that particular meter.
Yeah,
Right?
that wasn't necessarily how I read the question. The question was how would the load shaping service use it, but it doesn't need to use any data that is not actual, so it won't be calculating the load shapes based on estimated data. However, if you've got a new site, once you've got the ability to calculate a meter advance, then you can use the load shape that has been produced to calculate the half-hourly data.
Yeah, so just to reiterate, the load shaping service creates load shapes from actual half-hourly data from the smart meters, advanced meters, and from the unmetered supplies data service. Okay.
Could I just clarify on that what I was trying to ask was, when you have a new connection and it comes up and you've got no historic data and nowhere connecting it, how will that be fed into settlement? I was just trying to say, if the load shape settlement is the thing that's supposed to plug the gap, and you're saying that it's not going to do it when there's no historic data, what is going to plug that gap until the comms is fixed on either smart or advanced?
Yes, the ultimate backstop, Graham, is the load shape itself. If you've got nothing at all, and it's an energized site, then you'll just use the load shape until you have got something.
And is it worth just saying there, Kevin, what is the load shape?
Yeah, so the load shape is for a category of metering systems, the average of the actual data for that subset of metering systems.
So it's actually kilowatt hours by settlement period, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So that would give you an average of the energy in each half hour for that particular load shape category. And is it worth saying that initially there are, what, 56 load shapes or more?
56 sounds right.
Which is 4 by each GSP group, and 1 for import, 1 for export. I've forgotten what the other 2 are, Kevin.
The domestic,
Yes.
non-domestic, import and export, and then there are several others for advanced and 2 for unmetered.
Okay, I'm hoping that answered your question there, Graham. But if that spurs some other
thank you.
questions,
That's good enough. It's considered. That's fine. Thanks. Sorry to delay further.
No. And if you do have, and what I would say is, if after today's session, and say when you've seen the slides or you've seen the recording, or if you do have any other questions, I think we do have a contact. Either go through your PPC, your program participant coordinator contact, or I'm sure there's an email address that'll pop up later on in the slide pack, which you'll see, and send them through, and we'll do our best to answer them. Next question.
I guess I linked to what you just talked about, but which artifact details the load shaping service methodology and application?
Sorry, I couldn't catch that, Aaron. So can you repeat it?
Sorry, it's which artifact details the load shaping service methodology and application?
The load shaping service methodology statement.
Yeah. What I might do, or what I will do later on in the slide.
Sorry, I'll just qualify it. The application of the load shapes is in the data services methodology statements. The calculation of the load shape is in the load shaping service methodology statement.
I will show the website where these artifacts are published. So I'll show that in a little while. Next question.
Do we have architecture diagram to represent what is being replaced with what exactly, or decommissioned part of MHHS? So I think that says, do we have an architecture diagram to represent what is being replaced with what exactly, or decommissioned as part of MHHS?
I don't think we do. I think we only show what the new architecture is.
Yes. I agree with Kevin. I don't think so. I will take an action to confirm that, but I don't believe we show what is being replaced. What I would say, though, is what you'll see, and when the code drafting work starts after the design stage, you will see the manifestation of the design in the code drafting document. So you will see, I don't know, for example, the various balancing assessment code procedures, and you'll see that, well, that's the old document, and here's a new document, and depending on the type of our industry code document, you will see, you know, strikeout and redline. I think our approach, say, on the processing service is to say, well, for the old settlement arrangements, refer to BSEP 502, but for the new ones, because it's easier, just refer to this new balancing assessment code, BSEP 706 or whatever it may be. Next question.
Thanks, Justin. There's still questions coming in, so I don't know whether you want to keep going or whether we should...
we'll carry on. Okay, so hopefully we've given you a reasonable high-level view of, you know, the process we followed, and the timing. I mean, we started looking back in 2010 on half-hourly settlement, and it's taken us a while as an industry to get there, but hopefully we are now close to a pucker, robust design, which people can therefore do what they need to do to implement half-hourly settlement. So let's segue into, if my PC actually does anything now. Oh, yes, right, it's woken up. So how did we approach the work, and what are our deliverables? So really, I want to sort of highlight here that our main principle is a design-led approach, a bit similar to the faster switching program, if you've been involved in that. Then, a typical industry code approach of what you get today is someone raises a modification to a code or a change proposal, or lower level change. It goes through a certain process. You look at the changes to the actual industry codes, and then you go off to implement and do your design document, like your user requirement specifications. But our objective of this particular element of the program is to have a robust and comprehensive set of design artifacts which will deliver those 2 bullet points. Basically provide you with that statement of the business process, the system, and the data architecture, so that you can go off to design, build, and test your individual systems and associated business changes. We will also, as part of this design-led approach, define the more sort of technical or architectural requirements. So we will be looking at, connection patterns from the data integration platform. We will be looking at this event-driven architecture, which was a recommendation of the architecture working group from before, and this new data integration platform that we've designed to join up all these different business processes as defined within the TOM. So you can see there on the right hand side, we've got 3 main elements, as I've just described: the business process, the system architecture, that data architecture, which therefore leads you to this overall design. And I believe we've got about 75 design artifacts which describe this design. And as you can see there, we've got the participant, the physical design, and the code changes that come off that. So that's been our approach. How have we done that with industry? Because this has been an industry-led change. Previously, all major changes to industry have been led by the regulator, Ofgem. This is the first time that Ofgem has given the baton back to industry to say, you're the design experts, you are the program experts, you get on, you go on and deliver this. And what we've done from a design perspective is set up a number of working groups, expert groups, to whoa, not do that. And hold on, why that did that is beyond me. Thank you. I must have touched something. So I mentioned at the start, we've got this design advisory group, and that represents all the different constituencies out there in industry. And that's sort of listed in that bottom, excuse me, bottom little point there, where we've got large suppliers, we've got medium, independent, commercial, we've got small suppliers, we've got, you know, Alexon, we've got, you know, DCC, we've got distribution businesses. Then they are constituency reps, and they will be reviewing all the work that's done by these lower level groups. And for those who have seen the various documentation or design description or the program description, you see that the design advisory group is a level 3 group, and they have all these level 4 groups reporting to them. And that's where the heavy lifting has been done over the past 8 months, 9 months, from November last year, where we've had the majority of work being done by what I'm showing here is a business process and requirements working group, the BPRWG. And in order to develop those design artifacts, that was broken down into a number of different work streams, one looking at the registration requirements, and then you can see right through to the smart market segment. And we've had real good participation. It's only with the input from the industry experts, your good selves, have we been able to deliver all these design artifacts and therefore a robust design. And you can see some of the, you know, the figures there about the number of meetings we've had, number of hours, and the number of organizations that have participated. And from my 30 years in the industry, that has really been amazing, fantastic, brilliant. You know, you guys have and girls have rolled up your sleeves to really get on and develop a robust set of design artifacts. So I'll take this opportunity to, you know, say thank you. What we've also done is, because there's been so many design artifacts, we've released them for approval by the Design Advisory Group, the DAG, in tranches, and there have been 4 tranches. And as you can see there, we've received a fair amount of comments on those 37 design artifacts to date. And you can see how that pie chart is broken down by the various different tranches there. Obviously, you can see that tranche 4, which we've just now released with all the other updated tranche 1, tranche 2, tranche 3 artifacts have been reviewed and approved. What we've done there is we've had conditional approval by the DAG. So if there are any DAG members on the call, thank you very much for your input and approval, or conditional approval there. And that's been approved based on obviously, as you say, no, with each sort of design artifact, there'll probably be some open design issues where we've still got to do further work as a program to resolve that, say, where we've got optionality on solution design, or we've got further work to do, detailed work within a further tranche, or also where we've got sort of dependencies on other areas. So you can also see on the right hand side that we've broken down from constituency the type or the number of comments we've received. I just want to take this point to show you. This is, hopefully if this has come up, this is a link to the MHHS program, and that is the, and we'll, I don't know whether Amity can actually stick that in the chat. There's the link to where all these design artifacts are now. We've published all of them as of today, and therefore you can see that they are grouped by theme, meter to bank, metering changes, so forth and so on. We've got the comments log template that's there, and also you can see there we've got the plan on the page for the design playback sessions which are attending today. And I think a communication has gone out to those members of the the industry working groups, and also I understand a wider communication will be going out to industry. Let's get back on there. Let's see what the next slide is. So this is a breakdown of the actual design artifacts, and what we've got is the following sort of areas. We've got the business process diagrams, which show you how this area of the business process interfaces to another area of the process. This is what's done by, say, a supplier. This is what's done by the smart processing service. This is what's done by the advanced data service. And that's where you'll see the context of how everything fits together by business process and what the flows of information or the messages between those different business processes. To complement that, we've got a set of process descriptions, and I'm glad the number tallies the same business process, and that will give you a bit more of a description of what each business process does. And then for some of the business processes, we have a set of requirements which are in the business requirement specifications. And that's where you'll see the real nitty gritty of the requirements. I will also jump over to what I would say is one of the key supporting artifacts for some of the relevant business processes are the method statements. And the method statement is where we describe the detailed calculation that is done by each business process. And that's what you'll see there in the real detail of the calculation. Also, another key document is the operational choreography, which shows you the timing of, yes, right, well, that process has got, I don't know, a day to do its bits and then pass it on to the next sort of link in the end-to-end design. Another two key, well, they're all key, another two important ones is the interface catalogue, where we describe all the different interfaces between the business processes, and with that, what the data items are within those interfaces. And we also have a reporting catalogue, which defines all the typical reports that you would be seeing primarily from the Electron Central Systems aspects. What data is coming out by settlement run from the market data service or from the volume allocation service. And then there are the logical data model and a number of technical artifacts that define things like the data integration platform, functional specification, non-functional requirements, and that gives you that overall overarching set of design documents. So I showed a little bit of that in the website page, but as you can see, is we've grouped them into a number of themes. And I'm sure you can read from the slide, they go from the MPAN ownership into the sort of metering, meter to bank, and other supporting documents. And that table there shows you where we believe that each constituency should focus their attention on those type of artifacts, because they will be impacting on you to deliver elements of that business process. And you can also see that in the design artifact matrix. And I'm not sure I think these are all linked. Oh, that's good. So when you get the slides, you can see that. Right, I will pause there, Amity, for any questions. Amity, did we get any?
Yeah, sorry, just coming off mute there. Yeah, so we've had a couple more.
Yeah.
top one being, do we have a list of the existing data flows that are affected or introduced new data flows due to MHHS?
So we have a list of all the new data flows. Oh, sorry, we have a list of all the new flows or interfaces, and that will cover the ones that we are modifying. So, for example, there will be a D flow, and Kevin might be able to give me an example of this, where we are changing the contents of that flow for market-wide half-hourly assessment. Can you give us an example, Kevin?
Supplier deemed tape, for instance.
Yes. Now, I believe the program, or should I say the design team, have also got a list of all the D flows, so that, you know, we're saying, well, we're not changing that one, we are replacing that one or changing that one. And I think that might be the only thing that you've asked that's missing. So
yeah, that's not an artifact, but we do have it if people need it.
So I would need to check with the rest of the design team of whether we release or how we can release that. But what you've got in the individual design artifacts now are a list of all the new ones and all the ones that are being modified for market-wide half-hourly settlement. So the only thing that's missing out of that is what's not changing. Next question, please.
In terms of dumb meters like ppm and the BSCPs, limits the number of meter readings to DC to monthly. Will this limit be removed under MHHS to increase accuracy?
Amity, you broke up a bit. Sorry, could you just repeat that question, please? Sorry,
can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better.
So it says, in terms of dumb meters like ppm, the BSC, the number of meter readings to DC to monthly, will this limit be removed under MHHS to increase accuracy?
I might just step in because I think Amity just went off again, unfortunately. So let me just read that one more time. In terms of dumb meters like ppm, the BSCPs limits the number of meter readings to DC to monthly. Will this limit be removed under MHHS to increase accuracy?
Good question.
I must admit, I wasn't aware of that there was that restriction, but yeah, I don't see why meters couldn't be read more frequently if that limit does exist. It's not something that's been considered at the moment. Mostly ppm stuff doesn't impact our calculations, but in terms of getting a meter reading, obviously we do need that in order to calculate half-hourly data.
Kevin, unfortunately, I remember that limit being put in many years ago. I think it was to stop every time someone charged up a PP, or they had a key or whatever, you'd get a read. You in effect could get a reading, so you could get inundated by lots of meter readings. So, I think the short answer is we'll need to come back to you, but I think in future there won't be a limit. But let's take that away. Marina, are you going to do some more questions then, please?
I will, absolutely. Is there a catalogue of interfaces and data that incorporate both the data transfer network and the data interface platform, the DIP? If not, is one planned?
Yes, I believe that is covered by the interface catalogue. It covers both data transfer network and new DIP flows.
Fab, thank you. Moving on to the next one. Will traditional metering exist in the advanced market? Will the answer to this also apply to intermittent polling metering?
Ooh. I think we've got a bit of an open question about what do we do with, say, advanced meters that are got CT but no comms. I think the view is that ultimately they will be, if you really can't get any comms in there, they will be moved into the advanced segment. You might need to do a handheld read, to get half-hourly data, or you might need to do an eyeball cumulative read, and then you would estimate using the estimation methods.
Kevin, was that right? You said moved into the advanced data service segment, yeah?
Yeah, so they would be moved ultimately be moved into the advanced segment, because I think the view is certainly for CT meters, all the CT meters will end up in that advanced segment.
Yes, so it is envisaged that there will be meters with non-functioning or no comms within the advanced data or advanced meter segment.
Thank you. We've got quite a few kind of questions that maybe we can approach at the end of the meeting if we've got a few to go.
Yeah, let's press on.
Thanks, Justin.
Thank you, Marina. Right, we've done that. Right, Paul, are you on the line?
I am on the line. Thank you very much, Justin.
Okay. So this is Paul Pettit. And let me introduce Paul. He's part of the System Integrator Design Assurance team, and thank you very much for covering this end, Paul.
Okay, thank you. Afternoon, everyone. If you flip to the first slide, I've just got a couple of slides just to go over at a very high level. Those that are here on Friday at the session that Simon did, these slides are very similar. Well, they are exactly the same, actually. And he covered what the event-driven architecture was. Basically, this was set out by Ofgem and the design working groups to basically come up with an interface between the new services to bring the industry, well, to bring an event-driven architecture and introduce that basically to the program. We had the data transfer network that's been around for 20 plus years, and which is more of a hub and spoke type arrangement. What we have with an event-driven architecture, we have something happens, an event, unsurprisingly, that basically goes to an event broker that basically looks at an event and makes decisions upon that, and then you have consumers at the other end that can subscribe to that. So what it does, it modularizes the setup and the interface, and this is the approach that's been taken for the data integration platform. If you switch to the next slide, Justin, please. What we have here is basically just an example. We have our smart meter. We have that information being collected by the DCC. That basically generates an event. That event basically going to the DIP, and the area highlighted in green is the DIP. It will basically take that information, and we're using this in its more simplest setups. So it will take that, and depending on some of the validation that the data integration platform does, it will basically route that information and make that information available to the end consumer. They can either get it direct or they can subscribe to those events. And by having this more modular approach, it basically provides security for the future, change for the future. It's more scalable, and so you can increase the number of event brokers. So if a future requirement dictates that, we want to push a lot more information across the DIP, we can do that by having an increased number of event brokers to basically manage that increase in work. The data integration platform itself is currently under procurement, so that's being looked at the moment, and the service provider will be announced, I believe, will be announced later on this year. But all that said, the work that the team's done thus far with regards to the interfaces, etc., that side of it won't change. So, Justin referenced a couple of documents a little while ago. To get an overview of how the architecture works, there's a document called the end-to-end technical architecture document, which describes basically how information flows from one party to another party. And if we switch to the next slide, there's some of you may or may not have seen this. Hopefully a number of you have, certainly if you were on the earlier sessions. This is a representation of the target operating model. It's got similarities to the one that was presented a few slides ago whilst Kevin was talking. But what this is looking to do, this has added the data integration platform into the middle, and it shows the interfaces that go between the different players around and different participants around the market. So SDS, ADS, the suppliers, and we've got Alexon at the bottom. So all the new flows and the new data is basically highlighted in blue there. Existing flows that go around essentially on the DTN, the data transfer network, are in black. This model's referred to sometimes as the Patrick model, and rationale behind that, the pink bit in the middle that kind of touches parts of DCC, incorporates the whole of the DIP, the whole of Electron Central Systems, BSC, etc., has a resemblance apparently to a character called Patrick in SpongeBob SquarePants. Refer to the Patrick diagram. That this is what they're talking about, and there's a number of versions of this that are used in various slide decks to basically show different aspects of the service, on where those aspects reach and should be looked at by different constituencies. So the dip in the middle, this event-driven architecture. Some things about that. There's interfaces. Interfaces are referred to in a lot of the documentation is as an interface or a publication. Simply put, an interface is an inbound flow, an inbound message to the data integration platform. A publication is that message coming out the other end. And during that flow of information across the DIP will actually do some validation on that. It will basically look at the general message structure, things like the routing. It will do other types of validations, basically syntactic validation. It won't look at the payload of the message itself, the actual business data within it. But when you start to look at the interface catalog that was published in full today in the 35 flows, so there's basically 35 interfaces going in and 35 publications coming out the other end. What the DIP does, when it gets an interface coming in, it will basically add some mandatory information to that, things like transaction ID. It will do time stamping, correlation IDs if they're needed, and it will then basically push that message onto the recipient. So the interface catalog itself is made up of these 35 flows. Just as Justin said, there's central systems reporting interfaces. I think there's about 18 of those as well. As part of the interface catalog, there is a tab in there called data catalog, and that data catalog lists out the data items that make up the interfaces, and I think there's about 225 of those. And someone asked a little while ago a reference back to the DTC. So where there's an existing DTC J number, as they used to be called, well, as they're still called, there's an actual cross-reference back to that, so you can see what it was in the DTC and what it is in the DIP going forward. Also, we touched on a couple of transaction types or transaction patterns that will go across the DIP. There's a pattern A and a pattern B. Pattern A is basically your standard transactional type transaction. Basically, the data will be held in the payload of the message going across the DIP, and when the receiver gets that message, it's all contained within that flow. Pattern B is a notification and download. I'm aware of one at least, and that's of that pattern type. That's the ISD and the industry standing data. So what will happen? An interface, I think it's 47, when that comes out, will basically, it won't contain the standing data itself, but it will contain a link through to where that data can be found, and that will be published on the DIP service provider or the Alexon website. So there's two main types of transaction that will go across the DIP. But the other document that's been referenced before, and in part, was the design artifacts matrix, and this is the one that I think Justin touched on earlier on, where it had the MPAN, the meter to bank, metering changes. What that document also has are the interfaces that are related to those areas. So for argument's sake, MPAN ownership, you've got an IA and 26, and so it's quite a good reference point to go back to if you are looking at a specific area of the design, on what interfaces are being used for those. Within the business process models, again, the interfaces are all defined in there. Where existing interfaces, where they're still going to use DTN flows or CSS flows, etc., they've also, I believe, that they've also been highlighted within those business process diagrams as well. So you don't have to go off and find what they are. They're actually listed in the business process diagrams. So that really was a very high level whistle-stop tour of the data integration platform. There are, as I said before, there's a couple of key documents that are definitely worth the read. The fact that we've now got the interface catalogue and that was published this morning, and along with the rest of the artifacts, will hopefully bring this all together and is in what I call the glue to the whole of the design solution. But that's what I was going to cover in this session. Happy to take questions now or later on.
Thank you, Paul. Let's ask. I'm going to ask Marina at this point. Are there any good questions? Well, not good questions. Are there any questions we could cover here?
I think Amate's ready to go.
Okay. Thanks, Amate.
We'll try again. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, that sounds better.
Great. So the top one we've got is that the DIP does not replace all the DTN market flows. Do the business process diagrams and description contain all of the DTN flows that remain in each process?
If the DT, so I understand it, and what I've seen of the business process models, where that flow is used to provide the service as part of provide the market half-hourly service, yes, they are included. They are highlighted in the BPM flows, in the BPM models. Sorry.
Yeah, and listed in the interface catalog.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Amateur.
Since the MHHS program is following, I think this is TOGAF. TOGAF. Do we have as is, to be, and gaps related to the TOM?
I don't believe there are no as is. It's all to be. The business process, it's
everything
all
replaces what we've got now. So as it's the current BSC or settlement or SEC or REC describes what it is now, and that's in effect replaced from a design perspective with the target operating model, and will manifest itself in changes to the current industry code documentation. For
Brilliant.
supplier volume allocation, doesn't replace, say, the imbalance price calculation or other things not touched by market-wide half-hourly settlement. Okay.
Okay. The next one is the REC has changed all of the names of the D flows. Are you using new or old names?
The reference, as far as I'm aware, they're still using this. I think this is a reference out to what they got EMAR, but the business process diagrams use the D flows as most people are aware of them and understand them. We don't reference an EMAR flow.
No, but we do reference the EMAR for governance reasons, I believe.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Any other top ones, Amity?
The next one is on the dip, how will parties get notified? On the dip, how will parties get notified of new or changed events?
There's they can subscribe to basically a webhook. So as messages are put on a queue, they will basically get an acknowledgement, or basically that will trigger an event. So they will subscribe to their queue, and it will come through via what they call a webhook type arrangement. So they don't have to. They don't have to go and
subscribe to an event, don't you?
Yeah, you don't have to go and poll the queues every 30 seconds or every minute or whatever. When something happens, that will trigger the event and make that data available.
Yeah, do get it. Okay. Any other ones, Amity?
Is there any intention to allow access to the DIP for third parties who want to access consumption data?
The access to data across the DIP will be role based. If you've got a reason to use it that's allowed, then yeah, you can get access to it, I believe. And it won't.
I think it depends on what you mean by third parties there. I would say that, obviously metadata is, confidential to the customer and its supplier or their sort of data service provider. Now, there may be in future, and say LDSO as well, I suppose, for dual purposes, there may be scenarios in future where there needs to be, or there's a requirement, a request, a need out in industry or wider for anonymized data, which may be provided in future reports from the market data services service, market-wide data service, or MDS under Lexon Central Systems. But I think the answer is you'll be able to subscribe to that event if you've got the authorization for that. Is that right? There's authorizations administered.
I can also see things like the Office for National Statistics or BAYS accessing the data for regulatory purposes, because they would have such permissions.
Yeah. Okay. Any other top questions, Amity, or should we move on?
I'll just do two quickly together. Based on the criteria, based on what criteria DIP breaks the daily file to half-hourly data?
The DIP itself has no business logic, only other than to route traffic. So it doesn't take the data and amend it or manipulate it in any way, shape, or form.
Yes, I was going to say that if this helps as well, you've got this, say, this particular service, or let's take advanced. So they've read the meter, they've got the meter data, and that might be packaged up by day, and those reads go through the data integration platform and then into central settlement services. We have designed it where you could have partial data, for a day, which feeds its way through into central services as well. So the data in a flow will normally be for a settlement day, but it might cover a partial settlement day as well. Is that right, Kevin?
I think the key element is the DIP isn't calculating half-hourly data. The data services are calculating half-hourly data. The DIP is merely delivering that half-hourly data to the subscribers.
Yeah, based on that event. Yeah. Okay, were those two in one there, Amate? Was that
no, I'll put the last one before we move on. Is where is the list of amended D flows? I understood that this was in the interface catalog, but I can't see it.
It's
right.
I can confirm it's not in the interface catalog. So Justin, we might need to take that one away.
There's some in the report, amended D flows in the reporting catalog.
Sorry, the reporting one, yeah. Okay. Not the interface one that I referenced earlier.
But we have got a separate list of what we think's staying, and at least initially, you know, which D flows are going, which ones are staying, which ones are amended, but it's not part of this release.
Okay, but I thought the interface catalog described any amended DTN flows. Is that not right?
The interface catalog as it currently stands does not. I've got it open in front of me here.
No, it's just all the DIP flows.
It's the DIP
flows. Okay, so it's only from a reports perspective, yeah. Okay, right. Okay, well, let's move on. Oh, right, where did we get to? Oh, testing. I went too far. Adrian, are you on the line?
I am, Justin. Afternoon, everybody. And you can never go too far testing. That's what I've learned anyway.
Is that right?
but anyway, if I'll introduce myself. I'm Adrian Ackroyd. I'm the program test manager for MHSS, and I've just got one slide. It is a high-level slide, and it's just going to give you a flavour to the approach that we take in. This approach is been used before. There's nothing groundbreaking or new in here, and it's basically split into three activities. There's the pre-integration testing, the PIT phase, where we expect all participants to do their own level of internal testing using their own processes, methods, etc. with regards to testing. We're then looking at setting up a system integration testing phase, and with this this phase of testing, we're going to combine or component integrate the central systems, the Elexon central systems, the DTN, DCC, the registration services, etc. We're going to build that in a sequential and staged manner. So we, incrementally add components till we get a working entity with regard to central systems, and then on top of that, we will be looking to engage with volunteer participants to do the actual SIT testing phase. Now that the SIT testing phase will encompass functional, end-to-end. There'll be an element of non-functional testing in there. Operational testing, and also this phase was not included in the original Ofgem timeline, a migration test phase, where we can ensure that the willing participants can migrate their MPANs from the old settlement system to the new settlement system. So as I say, we're looking for volunteers to participate in that space. We have had interest from a number of participants already. But from a testing perspective, to benefit the program and to benefit your particular and individual organisations, I would ask that you consider that phase of testing quite seriously. I believe you will get a lot of benefit from participating in it. But I also acknowledge that it would be quite a big ask from some of the organisations. But yeah, if you could actively consider it, that'd be really, really useful. And then after after and partially in parallel with that, we're going to have the user integration testing. So this particular phase would be broken down, as we see it at the moment, into two activities. One for the qualification, which must be performed by all participants, who wish to use the new settlement system. The details of that qualification are still being worked through with, Power BI, Exxon, etc., and the other code bodies. So that's in flight. And once you've qualified, there's then going to be an end-to-end sandbox environment established, where it is free for use by the participants to exercise and execute any additional processes testing that they seemed or deemed to seem fit to be running. That we're running, and I say in the sandbox, it will be under the control of the participants themselves. There will be an element of monitoring across the piece with regards to any defects that arise that are relevant to the central system. So there'll be, as I say, an element of monitoring over that phase. So as I say, that's the three phases or activities that we see to support those phases of testing. We, as we seem to have in these programs, we have a testing and migration advisory group. And at the moment, that covers both the testing aspect and the migration aspect. People have said, why is migration included in there this early? It's included in this early because it's key. And one of the objectives of the testing work stream is to try and get as much information as we can out there early. And to that regard, we've already issued an end-to-end integration test plan strategy and also a data strategy. As I say, that they're at issue 1. There is a review plan for those now that the design has been issued, and that review will take in any amendments or deltas that have occurred since the documents were first created and until the design has been agreed. So that is in flight. Sitting under that, it's called TMAG. We're trying to keep it as short and as sweet as we can. Underneath TMAG, we've got 4 working groups at the moment. Yes, there are a lot of working groups, but I think we're trying to encourage expertise within those particular areas to attend those working groups. And so hopefully across the piece, we'll have the right resources on the right meetings to contribute and get the most out of that time that we spend together. So we've got a data working group, and that's to discuss all aspects of data, what data we need, where do we source it from. We envisage the requirement to have a data cut taken. What will that encompass? When will that need to be taken? Again, just to try and get that information out there early, and so people can start to plan for it. Because I've been involved in a number of programs where the request for data has come late, and it's a reactive and not proactive. So we're trying to alleviate some of those things that we've all experienced in previous programs. A migration working group has been set up, and this is to discuss the optionality around the migration. Do we need all to be ready, or participants to be on a certain date? Is there an element where it can be a phased migration? How long will that migration take to move all those MPANs from the old settlement system to the new settlement system? Again, all of this is in flight. It's all up for discussion. And we're slowly working through the points of not concern, the points of interest, and where we think as a program and as an industry we can make these processes efficient. There's I think last week there was the first meeting of the environment working group. Again, a key element to understanding the requirements from participants with regard to the test environments that they need. Again, we're trying to get this out this year so that those organisations that need to go through budgetary reviews and requests, etc., in time for when the environments need to be set up, have ample time to do that. And the last working group we have in flight at the moment, or the inaugural meeting of which is tomorrow, is the qualification and the end-to-end sandbox working group. Again, qualification, comes quite a way down the track, but it is important to understand from a programme perspective and also from a participant's perspective what the requirements are for that qualification phase. The programme itself is not responsible for the qualification because it's a PAB Elexon piece to execute. However, we do realise that as a programme, we will be involved in that. So as soon as we can shape that and get the understanding in place and the requirements and the asks from the participants, the better. As I say, the first meeting is tomorrow. I would encourage all participants where possible and feasible to attend these working groups. They are well attended at the moment, and there are good places for free and open exchanges of ideas and information. And it's only through that the process of where we're all talking together can we, as an industry-led programme, drive that testing through, so we attain the optimal and maximum benefit from doing that. So as I say, that was a quick walk through our approach to testing. There are a number of documents already issued. There are a number of documents being formulated for review and issue later in the year. Information can be gained again from the portal under the testing section. And if anybody has any questions, my email address is somewhere and easily accessible. So yeah, feel free to send any queries or questions through to me.
Thank you, Adrian.
I think, as I say, that's all I've got to say on the subject currently, but I will have a lot to say as it develops. But I think as a high-level view, that's what we need to be imparting on participants at the moment.
Okay, and Adrian, thank you. So I'm conscious of time. We've got about 15 minutes left. So Amate, I'll take a couple of questions and then we'll carry on.
Sure, just the top two then. What are the data retention rules around the DIP?
As far as I'm aware, the DIP will retain data for 14 working days, and that will enable parties to basically come back in and do what they call a replay of that message. That's part of the DIP functionality. As for archiving data and stuff like that, I believe it's 2 years, but we'll go away and have a check on that.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Next question then.
Will traditional metering exist in the advanced market? Will the answer to this also apply to intermittent polling metering?
So Kevin,
we already had that question, didn't we? I think what we said is, if it's an advanced meter, it will eventually end up in the advanced segment, even if you can't get comms in there, and that might require a handheld read or
so we have specified it, Kevin, such that the advanced data service can take in sort of handheld reads. Yes. Yeah, it's one of their estimation processes, but ultimately we don't really want the advanced meters staying in the smart and trad segment. No. Okay, let's stop there. Let's finish off the the slides, won't take very long, and then we can try and answer as many questions on Slido. I have a quick question for my colleagues. If we can't answer all the questions in the time of the of this, do we, as a program, take those questions offline and try and answer them outside of this session?
That would seem sensible.
Yeah.
I can
Okay.
confirm, yeah, sorry, I can confirm that they will be, and they'll be made available on the portal somewhere. But yeah, we've taken a similar approach to the previous two playback sessions.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for confirming that, Paul. So a quick slide or two on consequential change. You may have noticed earlier that I showed a diagram of the design advisory group. They're responsible for reviewing and approving the design that's come up, that's been built up by primarily these groups here. We have also got this group here called the Consequential Change Impact Assessment Working Group. A bit of a mouthful, CCIAG for its initialism, and that is more of people being able to, or market participants to raise items that are not part of the scope of the TOM or the design, but people may believe that have an impact on their existing systems or processes. So it's more of a forum where those items can be brought forward by market participants, and those market participants believe that there is value to talking about those. And for example, an issue or change request could then be raised to put that in the scope of the program. We did originally, to give you a flavour of that, we did talk about, or I mentioned earlier, this thing about the EAC, the estimate of annual consumption, which is only really needed in the non-half-hourly market, but is used for lots of other non-settlement purposes. So based on all those discussions and the views within the design team came up with a start of a 10, which I believe has been discussed by a working group, which is now formulating as part of the design.
Yes, we've got an annual consumption method statement, you'll see, that's been published.
Okie dokie. Kevin's probably saying that because I was on leave last week, so I hadn't actually seen that. So thank you, Kevin. And we've got other items where standard settlement configurations and time pattern regimes have been discussed about whether that should remain, but they're not needed for the new market-wide half-hourly settlement purposes. So I want to then jump onto, I won't take any questions at that point now, but I want to just finish off about the other playback sessions. And you've got this very busy slide here of what we're trying to do is show all the playback sessions and deep dive that we've got, and I believe we've got all of these in the diary, and invites have been issued, well, invites or these dates have been published. Is that right, Marina, that all these dates have been published now?
Yeah, absolutely, and I can share the schedule again in the chat in a moment. Yeah,
so we've got these various design overviews, which, you know, is like today, these end-to-end walkthroughs. We've got design surgeries where I believe basically people can raise topics, and, you know, we have the appropriate subject matter experts from the program there to answer your questions on those particular topics there that you can see: technology, registration, settlement and metering. And then we have some deep dives where we can really get into the nitty gritty of, if people want to discuss the calculation that's covered by the load shaping service method statement, that we can, or any other design deliverable that can be covered there. So that gives you a flavour of, this is trying to really give you, our customers, the opportunity to embrace the design, understand the design, provide comments back, such that we can really make this a truly robust, comprehensive set of design documents, which then will hopefully lead to the successful design, build and test and implementation and migration of market-wide half-hourly settlements. And to quote someone famous out there, who I've now forgotten his name, you know, we don't know what we don't know within the program, and you know, it's from your own business perspective, be you a supplier, you know, a technology provider, service provider, distribution business, just to name but a few, you can bring your design and expertise perspective from that business arena into the program. So thank you to date, and thank you for it in advance. And then the next slide I think we're just going to finish on is, this is just I think we've got this published about where do you believe you should be attending these sort of playback or design or deep dive sessions. And as you can see, it ranges from I'm new right down to, you know, I'm a subject matter expert with an interest in metering, settlement, processing, and therefore these are the sorts of sessions that I'd be interested in. Okay. So we have just over 5 minutes for some more questions. Amate.
Great. So the top one is, will there be a machine readable schema for the new, and I think it's IFs or IFS, and then it's RDBMS, a relational database format.
I want to take that. That's I believe the program we're intending to. I mean, they've issued the interfaces in an Excel spreadsheet format. There was talk, and I don't know, part of the design team unfortunately is not here today. They were looking at using Swagger to basically make that available on a Swagger platform. In addition to that, within the team, we're going to be taking the interfaces and putting them into our enterprise architectural repository iServer, and be making that available in the next few weeks, hopefully, and that will be notified via the clock as part of the portal upgrades.
And will that have a machine readable?
It will enable you to basically look at certainly, well, within iServer, it'll be able to. The intention is that you can look at an interface, find out where it's coming from, where it's going to, etc. So it's probably more related to someone from a BA looking at where those flows are going.
Can I clarify the requirement, please? Currently on the
sure.
DTN, we've got systems that automatically pick up on a schema that build the flows from that schema. So when there are updates, the system automatically builds the new update, or you can select the version of the flow.
Right.
Well, those spreadsheets are fine, but they show you what all the structures are, but they're not machine readable, as in an automated be able just to import them and be able to use a new flow structure or anything like that.
Okay, no, that's fine. No, thank you for that clarification. In that case, that's probably going to be from the DIP. That will be provided by the DIP service provider. We'll take the question away to find out whether that was a requirement on the DIP service provider to make that available.
Okay, just because originally the DTC had an access database that had that schema. When they moved over to the REC, they removed it, and there was an almighty furor because it killed nearly half the suppliers out there because they were all relying upon it, and now it's been put back. So I would suggest that there probably is quite a healthy appetite to have it.
I suppose what I would say is we've got published the functional spec, haven't we, for the DIP? Graham, if you'd want to, if you have time, is have a look at that, and I wonder whether there is a requirement in there, or it might even be in the non-functional requirements. But we'll take an action to try and find that.
We'll take an action to go and have a look at that.
Thank you.
Right, we might have time for a couple more then, Amate.
Sure. Just before I do, just responding to a couple of things that are sort of circulating. Just to say that if everyone keeps an eye out for the clock, we'll be circulating recordings of each playback there, and these will be hosted on the website and the collaboration base. And mhhsprogram.co.uk/events is where the slides and the links to the YouTube are stored. In terms of a question, we've got, in the event of dip maintenance, patching, for example, will a load balancing approach be taken to repoint subscribers to the same queue, or will a backup be available?
I think that's, I don't think we can't actually go into specifics at the moment because we haven't, well, they haven't awarded the contract to the dip service provider. So whilst that is going through an assessment, yeah, the options and the types of solution are varied at the moment. So yeah, we're not able to answer that question at this time.
Okay, should we take one more then, Amate?
What will be the advanced meters at the end of the migration phase in 2025? Only INC and SME meters, or will there be old AMR meters in the domestic realm?
Oh, I don't know whether that's been decided yet, Kevin.
Well, I think ultimately, if stuff is migrated, it will be in the ultimately be in the advanced segment. You know, we've got to, but what we don't want is all the difficult ones left right till the last minute, and then we got a rump. But yes, there will be some domestic customers in the advanced segment, which is why we've had to put in these estimation processes in case any of those customers opt out.
So I suppose it would be part of the migration. One of the considerations for defining the migration will be if there are some, difficult meters or different. I'm trying not to say difficult customers, but some like the more complex sort of metering arrangements or situations that they're not all left to the last minute, as you quite rightly said, Kevin. Okay. Well, let's call it a day for today. Just so I've got a flavour, how many unanswered questions have we got left, Amate?
There are quite a few.
More than 2?
Yes, about sort of 15.
15?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we'll do the approach that we've done on other sessions, is we will look at those and look to respond to them offline. Thank you very much for the contributors to today. Kevin, Paul and Adrian, and obviously Amate and Marina in keeping us on the straight and narrow. And the recordings will be available. The slides will be available as well. Thank you very much for some really good questions and your attendance today. And we might see you at the next session. So thank you very much. See you soon.
Thanks very much.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.